Talking to Jeff Long here, chairman of the College Football Playoff Committee. Tiki and Tierney, second installment here on CBS Sports Radio. You know, if Iowa and Ohio State meet in the Big Ten Championship, that'll resolve itself. On some level, I think a key game, which I know you guys have circled down the road, Stanford, the Cardinal play Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is now number 4. But the most perplexing one to me is, well, there's two. Actually, there's three. Iowa, who I like, Baylor, who I don't, and Oklahoma State, who I don't think got the respect that they should have. How do you put those three in different categories for us, and just in a broad snapshot, if you can?
Yeah, I think Iowa has strong on both sides of the ball. They're not flashy. They've been consistent. They built a resume. They've got two top 25 wins on the road. So I think that has really influenced the committee and gave them a respect for Iowa. You know, Baylor and Oklahoma State, they both have the majority of their tough strength of schedule games in front of them. And the Big 12 schedule is backloaded, and so it's difficult for the committee to really evaluate them because they haven't seen them against top-level teams yet. I think Oklahoma State's win against TCU at home was convincing, and it moved them quite a bit in the poll in our rankings. So I think that we'll see the particularly in the Big 12, the strength of their schedules are yet to come. And then Iowa, you know, they've got some challenging games left in the Big Ten.
No, a team like Clemson that doesn't have its highest strength of schedule in front of it, obviously having Syracuse and then Wake Forest and then finishing up at South Carolina. Are you essentially encouraging or this system, because the old system did encourage this, but is this new system encouraging major blowouts against inferior teams?
No, I don't think so. You know, margin of victory is certainly we're aware of it, we see it, we know it, but that's really not incentivized at all in what we're doing in the way we rank. So, no, I don't think it does that. I mean, Clemson, you know, has a strong resume. Gosh, they've got I think 6 wins over teams with better than 500 records,
yeah.
and then Florida State's a really good team that they beat, and Notre Dame.
Jeff, I look at Memphis, who obviously dropped, and Navy beat them up pretty big, and there's nothing Memphis could do at this point to get from 21 inside the top 4. I think we would all agree with that. But they're kind of like a VCU or a Butler or a George Mason back in the day, or they were before they lost this past weekend. Before they lost, especially that they have an NFL quarterback who could be a first-round pick in Paxton Lynch, I mean, how viable was Memphis in terms of possibly cracking? What would they – I guess it's almost a moot point because they lost, but I am curious, were they positioned somewhere in a vicinity where if they did enough things, they could actually crack the top 4?
Well, it's hard to project out like that. But I will say the AAC has done, of the group of 5 conferences, they've done a great job of scheduling up. And then this year they've won some of those games. You see a Temple beating Penn State. You see, Memphis has beat Ole Miss, a strong SEC team. So I think the key to those groups are playing up and then winning some of those games, and you see that with Memphis and now Navy and Temple.
Jeff, how do you check your impartiality, right? Because you're obviously the athletic director at Arkansas, and your head coach is very interesting in some of the things that he slips up and says. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. But how do you protect impartiality in this room?
Well, all of us, made a commitment to join this committee. We all made a commitment to act in the best interests of college football. We challenge each other before we go into that meeting every week, and I do as chair that we check our hat at the door, and that's the term we use, and we check those allegiances, those former those relationships, those former institutions we worked at, and we keep that outside the room. We think that's really important. The management committee chose this group of 12 now for their high integrity, and I think that we take that as a real source of pride that we're not going to let bias creep into that room. And as chair, I check that, and we have others that check that, and I'll be honest with you, it really has not entered the room.
Jeff, if I'm a fan, as you know, we're a national show. We have well over 140 affiliates, so we're well represented from the East Coast all the way up to, whether it's the Great Pacific Northwest, Northern California. If I'm a Stanford Cardinal fan right now and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, okay, I know that they know in that room that we're good, and we have been very good for a long time, going back to Harbaugh. And of course, David Shaw has done a great job. And the Northwestern loss aside in week one, how do I know that I'm getting fair representation without a Pac-12 AD in that room? That would worry me if I'm a Cardinal fan.
Yeah, well, it shouldn't because, we're not chosen to represent a conference. I mean, Pat Hayden, when he was there, he wasn't representing the Pac-12
No,
at
but
all.
but no, I get that. But he can speak more intimately to the positives and accentuate that to you. You know what I mean? If there's nobody, just like I could represent CBS Sports Radio because I work here and I'm intimately, aware of how we operate and what we do, and I'm not suggesting that it's crooked. Please don't take it the wrong. I'm just talking about
No.
that all-encompassing conversation. If nobody from the Pac-12 is there, in theory, the Pac-12 is getting shorted. It's common sense.
Yeah, you may think of it as common sense, but that's not something that we're concerned about in the committee. I mean, we don't represent a geography. We don't represent a conference. There are certainly people in that room that are very familiar with the Pac-12. Dr. Rice from Stanford and Tyrone Willingham, who used to coach in that conference, both at Stanford and Washington. So there's people in that room that know the Big 12. So and again, it's not like we're representing those areas. We're representing college football.
Jeff, I wanted to ask you one more thing. It pertains to Notre Dame. Notre Dame, like the Yankees, like certain teams, the Cowboys. You either love them or hate them for a multitude of reasons. What about people out there who say, well, if it comes down to Notre Dame and, say, an Iowa or a Baylor or a Stanford, given the monetary cachet that the Irish pack, that they would get the edge? And a lot of people believe that. I know you've heard that. How do you respond to that?
Well, you know what? In that committee room, it's all football. I mean, we get the question about branding. Does the brand mean something? If you were in that room, you would know that there's not ever a mention or ever a thought. I mean, we're watching those games. We've seen Notre Dame play Navy and beat them 41-24. We've seen them be challenged by a Temple who's ranked by it. We've seen them go on the road, at Pitt, and we've seen them beat USC, and we've seen how they did that. So, it's really more about the football in that room. It's really not about brand. It's not about what their reputation is. It's how the group of student athletes that are on that field this year are playing. So it's hard to express that to people across the country, but it really is all about football in that room.